Ο Πούτιν είναι ένας άνθρωπος που θέλει ειρήνη, είπε μεταξύ άλλων κατά τη διάρκεια συνέντευξής του στο Fox News ο ειδικός απεσταλμένος του Αμερικανού Προέδρου Ντόναλντ Τραμπ, Στιβ Γουίτκοφ. Ο ίδιος τόνισε επίσης ότι από τη Δευτέρα 24 Μαρτίου αναμένει να δει πραγματική πρόοδο στις συνομιλίες στη Σαουδική Αραβία για τον τερματισμό της σύγκρουσης μεταξύ Ρωσίας και Ουκρανίας.
I feel that he wants peace. The president had two very productive calls this week, or last week I should say, one with President Zelensky, one with President Putin. I sat and listened to both of them. In both conversations, it was all about a lasting peace. Lots of progress got made last week. The parties agreed to an energy infrastructure moratorium on attacks for energy infrastructure. I think that you're going to see in Saudi Arabia on Monday some real progress, particularly as it affects a Black Sea ceasefire on ships between both countries. And from that, you'll naturally gravitate into a full-on shooting ceasefire.
Okay, you have said recently you don't, quote, I don't regard Putin as a bad guy. You've said you feel like you can negotiate with him, but here's how the National Review describes him. They said he's a tyrant who murders, maims, and imprisons his critics, who has abolished civil society and independent media in Russia, who has invaded a neighbor, engulfing that country in violence for the purpose of crushing and subjugating it, goes on to say that Russian forces have committed mass kidnapping, torture, rape, and murder under Putin's guidance and leadership. So where do you get to that assessment about him not being a bad guy?
You know, Shannon, I met with President Putin twice. At the direction of the president, because everything I do is at his direction. And they were productive meetings. We accomplished quite a bit. We opened channels of communication. President Putin told me at the first meeting that he had had no conversation with the prior administration, in particular President Biden, for 3.5 years. I'm not sure how anyone would expect an end to a conflict when you're not communicating. So we had a very, very good conversation, productive. We discussed real ways to end this conflict. That led to a second conversation. First conversation being close to 3.5 hours. Second conversation being in that time, in that space as well, 3.5 or 4 hours. That led to by the end of the second conversation, we had proposals on an energy infrastructure ceasefire and a Black Sea moratorium on firing on each other's ships, and these things had been on the shelf for several years. So, I think that's commendable on the part of all of the parties, and this is at President Trump's direction. His philosophy of peace through strength brings people to the table to clear up misconceptions and to get peace deals done. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
Do you feel like there's a misconception, though, about the characterization of him as a tyrant or someone whose political opponents often disappear or die?
I think in my 68 years on this earth, I've never, ever seen a situation where there isn't two sides to a story. It's just never as black and white as people want to portray. So there are grievances on both sides, but our job, and at the direction, again, I stress, of the president, our job is to narrow the issues, bring the parties together, and stop the killing. That's the game plan. And that's what we're all there to do.